Babylon and Armageddon. Both the city of Babylon and this place in ancient Israel called Armageddon find their historical importance way back a long time ago. Interestingly, Apostle John, in his Revelation, the book of Revelation, brings their meaning back to life in his prophecies for the end time. What is their meaning? And what kind of imagery do they represent? And how is that related to our preparation for the end time is the object of this lesson. So let's jump in and find some answers.
We're studying the culmination of the conflict between God and Satan, which is marking the end of times as we know it. Everything is at stake in this conflict. Something that humanity has been going through for over 6,000 years and being engaged with cannot be explained in simple words. There is a lot of imagery speaking about things that we don't understand with a language from times that we don't understand. It can be a big mess. But if we ask God for guidance and we study openly and we ask Him to reveal to us what we need to know, He will not let us down. In the last few weeks, we looked at some important parties involved in this conflict and their significance in the development, and the end of the development of this conflict. America and Babylon, God's seal and the beast mark, and now we have again Babylon and also Armageddon. So getting into it, the author mentions that for some, the Bible is like a tale for two cities, Jerusalem and Babylon. There is something in that.
There are two big signs that the Bible uses to characterize what Babylon stands for. The first one is Babylon made all the nations drink from her maddening wine of her adulteries. And the second one, Babylon the Great has fallen. The first sign is a spiritual antipode of what Jerusalem stood for: violence, oppression, false religion, and rebellion against God. According to Revelation, there was in the past and there will be in the future, in the last days, a power, religious and political, that will lure the world after philosophy and knowledge of corruption and oppression. It will have the same power as the wine has over the mind. It will be very hard to give up on, and it will be invisibly deceiving.
Peter sends greetings from the church in Babylon, which is understood to mean from Rome. This is an interesting relation here too.
And this power named Babylon will lose it all. It will fall down. Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. Multiple times in the book of Revelation, this message is repeated in the chapters 14 and especially in chapter 18. It would be felt like a shock to all nations, shock to all the kings who committed adultery with her, shock to the merchants on the earth, and shock to every sea captain and sailor. Her influence, power, and standards have reached everything and everywhere. One day they will see the smoke of her burning. They will be terrified of her torment. They will weep and mourn. They will throw dust on their heads and cry. It is a shock when we realize that everything that we believed in and everything that made complete sense is suddenly gone, and it didn't stand the test of the time. Interestingly, in verse 20, in chapter 18, we find a group that is rejoicing in the losses of Babylon. It consists of the heavens, you people of God, and the apostles and prophets. It will be good to be in this group one day.
Deception is cruel, but at the end, it will be all clear choices. Now, we are getting to a name that has become a symbol of eschatological catastrophe, Armageddon. Hollywood even created a movie about the destruction of planet Earth by an asteroid exactly like that, Armageddon.
The image of Armageddon in the 21st century appears to be even more speculative than the city of Babylon. As much as Babylon is symbolic, Armageddon appears to be symbolic in its meaning too. Mainly we read about it in chapter 16 in the book of Revelation. And a lot of people, though, are trying to find and decipher a code that will speak of literal armies and literal kings and battles in this location of Megiddo. Based on the symbolic language all around in the verses, made me highly doubt about the literacy of such a meaning.
The name translates to something like Mountain of Megiddo, but there is no mountain in the place called Megiddo. In the vicinity, however, is Mount Carmel, and now this brings a lot of context.
And the lesson does it justice, at least this is how I believe it, that this battle in Armageddon relates to something that happened thousands of years ago before that on the Mount of Carmel with Prophet Elijah. And the lesson brings to our attention many details and imagery and symbolism that interconnects those two passages. Everything comes down to a choice that will be either on the side of God or on the side of Satan. And on Mount Carmel, the distinction is very clear, as it would probably be one day in this battle on Armageddon. Probably this lesson is a very good reminder, again, of who do we choose to believe in, and who should we trust our lives with? Who are we longing for when looking ahead for a future life?
In the days of Elijah, the identity of God got overtaken by false gods, false doctrines and beliefs. The focus was shifted, and what God was about, his character, his status in people's life, got blurred, then distorted, and completely perverted. Mount Carmel is not about God showing up power and force. He can destroy everything in a blink of an eye. He created it. But for him, it's a mission for saving those who will accept him, who will allow him to help them clean up from the drugs that we have been given for so long. The prophets of Baal were given a chance to prove their case and the power of their God. They did a show, a display of all that they got. They shouted, they cut themselves, they prayed, but nothing. For God, it's not about odds. The numbers, all the numbers were against him. They kind of always are, aren't they? But for him, it's about trust, faith, and the rest is just majesty.
We will be wrapping our study next week with the lesson, The Return of our Lord Jesus.